First, I want to say we're joined by Kelvin Otang and Pansa, considered the Prince of Ghana. He's a full sail graduate, sportscasting. The man has multiple degrees, former teacher, now he's trying to get into sports. He is a man amongst men. He is Kelvin, great guy, great friend. But we came here to talk sports to begin with. Let's talk about what we just saw. If you saw UCF versus Colorado, Colorado comes into the bounce house. Mr. Otang, can you tell me what did you see or hear from the game? What did you see?
Honestly, Demir, I saw a complete total team effort, domination on both sides of the ball and special teams. Colorado coming into this game wasn't ranked really good when it came to stopping the run. And UCF was like one of the top rushing teams in the country. RJ Harvey was a beast, and they held RJ to 65 yards on the ground and got 5 sacks on quarterback KJ Jefferson. So they got a pass rush and they picked them off 2 times. So defensively, they were excellent. And then offensively, I mean, what more can you say? When you give Shador Sanders time in the pocket, he can pick you apart. He can get it to those playmakers, whether if it's Travis Hunter, who had 4 for 98, a touchdown and an interception, Will Shepard, who played well, Jimmy Horn Jr., LaJounte Wester, like these guys, they go 4 deep when it comes to wide receivers. And I haven't even mentioned the sophomore Omarion Miller, who could come in at any time, and anytime he touches the ball, it's going for six. And they ran the ball well. That's one thing Coach Prime had been emphasizing all week, that they wanted to be more balanced, running the football, protecting Shador, getting the ball to those playmakers. So I could say overall, this was a total team effort. I mean, Colorado was a 15-point underdog going into this game, and they end up winning it 48-21. So just an outstanding effort. They're now 2-0 in the Big 12, and they get a bye week before they go home to play ranked Kansas State.
Is this the most complete game in the last 2 years you've seen from Colorado?
I would have to say so because Coach Prime has emphasized that he wants to put all aspects of the game together. Because there were some games where they would do well offensively, but defensively they would give up splash plays. And then there were other times where they couldn't protect Shador. In the game against them, even last week, even though they won against Baylor, they gave up 8 sacks. Maybe not that many sacks this week. And then defensively, last year, this team couldn't stop a cold. But now, at least in the second half, they've given up as many as 26 points in these 4 games. So these guys have really clanked it down defensively, and they've been able to get a pass rush. They sacked the UCF quarterback KJ Jefferson 5 times. So if you can get a consistent pass rush to go along with those DBs like Travis Hunter in the secondary, the sky's the limit for Colorado. So I have to say this was a complete effort in the 2 years that Coach Prime has taken over.
Through 4 games, they were 3-1. I believe now they're 4-1.
Yep.
If my math is right, they're four
Yeah.
and one. And a big proprietor of that 4-1 is one Travis Hunter. Is he the front runner for Heisman Trophy right now?
You would have to say so. I mean, we haven't seen a player like this since I would say Charles Woodson, that has done it on both sides of the ball, defensively and offensively. I mean, just in this game, he broke his streak. He snapped his streak of consecutive 100-yard receiving games. Like he had a 5 game streak of about 100 yards receiving. He only caught 4 for 98, but he had an interception. So if he keeps doing it on the defensive side, it keeps putting up 100 yards a game on the offensive side, you have to believe that he could be a Heisman favorite. Also on the team, I think Shador, if he keeps playing efficiently, he could be in the race. Another guy that we're not talking about that could potentially be in the Heisman race is down here in Florida, Miami, Cam Ward, the senior transfer quarterback he's transferred from Washington State. He thought he was going to go in the draft this year. Instead, he transferred to Miami. He just came off a huge win against Tech, 358, 4 touchdowns. He's currently leading the nation in passing. So he could potentially also be one of those guys to go into New York. But if I have to say so myself, I think Travis Hunter is the front runner for the Heisman Trophy right now, and he'd only be the second player in history to win it, doing it both sides of the ball, and he'd be the second uh, Colorado player to win the Heisman since Rashad Salam in 1994. So if he was able to do that, that would be awesome for him. And the way it's going, the Buffs could potentially have the number 1 and number 2 pick in next year's draft, with Travis potentially going number 1 and Shador being the first quarterback off the board. So
Outstanding insight from Mr. Otang. I do want to ask you one more question on the subject of Colorado. Do you believe that with Deion Sanders at the helm starting all this yet last year and then continuing it into this year, do you believe his effect on college football and Colorado as a whole is the same as Caitlin Clark's effect on the WNBA and Indiana, or do you believe it's actually more?
I would think that they're on the same page, but the difference with Colorado is that they were a laughing stock of a program prior to Prime going there. They were 1-10 in conference play, worst record in college football. This is a program that historically has always been good. You got to take it back to the '90s with the likes of Coach Mack, and they had guys like Cordell Stewart, Michael Westbrook, Eric Bieniemy, guys like that, winning national championships in the '90s, and then everything fell apart. But Prime's only been there 2 years. He's increased the school profile, so now more kids want to enroll in the school. The fact that he's gone into he's done it unconventionally. He's used the transfer portal to get guys that are like 4 or 5 star guys that are not getting playing time in some of the big time schools and convincing them to come here. And even in this recruiting, like he was able to get some 4 star guys, some 5 star guys from the local high school, because that's always been the knock on Prime, that he's always going into the transfer portal. But they look like they might have a great recruiting class going into next year. So even if they lose Shador and Travis next year, because they'll inevitably go because they're seniors. Well, Travis is a junior, but I would imagine after this year he's gonna declare for the NFL draft. So I think that this infrastructure that he's built there, I think, sets the foundation for what he could accomplish, have long-term success for the program. And if it does, he says he has no interest in the NFL. So if you want to stay in college football, I would imagine his alma mater, Florida State, who right now doesn't look so hot. A few years down the line, maybe they give Coach Prime a call to come save their program. Now he's doing all this in Colorado. Can you imagine if he's in Florida State,
I
how
can't
he would?
imagine it. You tell me.
I
What
mean,
Florida State?
yeah, I mean, he could get the guys from South Florida, Central Florida, and North Florida to come play for him if he was ever to be the coach of the Florida State Seminoles. That would be amazing. But I would have to say he's had significant impact, and not just at the school, like nationally, everywhere you go. Colorado is a national story, even when they're on TV. I'm sure when we look at the ratings for this game, it's going to be high. I mean, 3.5 million people watched the game between them and Baylor, right?
I
And
was
they
one of
weren't,
them.
yeah, and it was unranked. So I would imagine the next game is going to do ratings, because I would be shocked, given that they beat UCF by this many points, considering they were a 15-point underdog. I expect they need to at least be ranked in the AP poll going into next week if they really want to hype up this next Big 12 matchup. They're currently 2-0 in the Big 12, so we'll see. But yeah, I would agree. Coach Prime has had a significant impact in Boulder.
Outstanding. I want to segue this into something else. I know you're also a Dallas Cowboys fan and insider, but we're going to
Mm.
go more into the insider portion of it. What is the state of the Dallas Cowboys after 3 weeks, I believe, in the NFL?
Well, they were able to stop the bleeding in terms of running the football. I mean, they had given up 400 yards of running in the last 2 games, Saints and when they lost, they beat the Browns week 1, got destroyed by the Saints week 2, and then Derrick Henry ran them over in week 3. Now week 4, they turned around on a Thursday night, beat the Giants 20-15. I mean, the Giants were in the game. If Daniel Jones converts a little bit of those field goals, this could have easily been another loss. But Right now, the state of the Dallas Cowboys is okay. I mean, it's worrisome. They're at least 2-2, so they have a tough matchup next week. I think they play. I think it's the Steelers. Yeah, they play the 3-0 Steelers on Sunday Night Football next week. So that is not going to be an easy task. Steelers are currently number one in defense. Justin Fields, former Chicago Bear quarterback, now started for the Steelers. He's playing well. So I think for them is just to get back to what they did well. They've not been able to generate any pass rush. That's what the Cowboys were strength was
Is
last year.
is that what's going wrong with the Cowboys right now?
Yes, defensively, they cannot get to the quarterback. Micah Parsons, Demarcus Lawrence, those boys up front can't get pressure on the quarterback, which forces the defensive backs to play, you know, a little bit more than what they're comfortable with. Like the Cowboys want to get a huge lead so that it forces the opposing team to throw and that their pass rushers can go in and just tally and sack the quarterback. But they have not been able to get that. And even though they did win this game, it didn't come without a cost. DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons left the game with injuries. Micah has a high ankle sprain, so he could be out till week 7. Lawrence could, I mean, he was moving around. He could be out 2 to 3 weeks, so that'll be a loss on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, they seem to have found something. Dak is playing well. He's getting the ball to CD. I think but if I have to be frank, they have no playmakers on the outside besides CD. Brandon Cooks was supposed to be a viable number 2, and he's been a disappointment. I mean, I like their other guys like Cavante Turpin and Jalen Tolbert. But they're not 2 guys. There's solid number 3s. Their tight end Jake Ferguson is awesome. So he has another security blanket to go on. And then the running game just hasn't been there. I mean, they were able to run it a little bit last week, but Zeke and Rico Dowdle, I don't know ideally if that's a good combination. So I feel like this team offensively is going to rely on Dak and CD. And if I were the Cowboys, they normally don't do this, but I would go into the trade market and try and trade for another wide receiver just to put opposite CD so they could take pressure off CD and the other guy could get open. Names that are on the block. I heard Amari Cooper is on the trading block for the Browns, so maybe the Cowboys call the Browns to see if they can reunite Cooper and Lamb back in Dallas. So that's the majority of the problem. So I would say going into 3 weeks, yeah, Cowboys at 2-2, 500. I mean, ideally after you drop 2, you were able to get a road win. So I would say average and just regroup, heal up. They get 10 days off and then just prepare for the slugfest that is. I think they're either home or away. I'm not sure, but it's going to be a tough test against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I see. Now I'm going to talk to you as coming from a fan's perspective. What is the realistic outlook for the Dallas Cowboys on this season?
Well, in the last 3 years, they've finished 12-5. So Mike McCarthy has been able to conjure up 3 straight 12-win seasons, but they fell short in the playoffs. The regular season is not the problem for these guys. It's the postseason. Last 2 years, they fell short. Last year, they blew a home game against the Green Bay Packers. The year before that, they lost to the 49ers in a game that I thought they could have won if Dak played a little bit better. So for them, it's the playoffs. Now going into this year, the odds makers in Vegas has this team at least 8 to 9 wins. Now, I think I think one team is coming out of the NFC East. I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles look formidable. Heck, even the Washington Commanders with their rookie quarterback, Jaden Daniels, all of a sudden they look good. They got a huge win on the road against Cincinnati. They're 2-1. So they might not be an easy out. So if the Cowboys this year can get to 10 wins, 10, 11 wins, I don't think it would be successful. For them, it's the postseason. And I think Jerry's at a point where anything short of an NFC title game would be a failure. Now, do I think he would make the change and get rid of Mike McCarthy? I'm not sure, but it would have to be a complete meltdown. Like the Cowboys would have to lose the next 5 games and finish below 500 if Jerry Jones was going to make a coaching change. So regular season for these guys don't really matter. It's all about the postseason.
Okay, well, that is, thank you for the insight on that. Now we turn our attention to the state of Black people. And currently, there is one prominent Black figure that is under a heavy amount of scrutiny. What is your take on the Diddy situation?
This is
1,000 bottles of baby lotion.
something that I'm not necessarily surprised by because there's the
Really?
expression, yes, because there have always been rumors about Sean Combs and whatever he goes now. He's entitled to his day in court. So we'll see what happens when, the
What was
court
he
dates.
using those bottles for?
That's the $1 million question. I don't know what that man does in his personal life, so I can't say. But yeah, we'll just have to see what the court documents show. Right now, he's accused of sex trafficking
Whoa.
and a whole bunch of, questionable behavior. I mean, the legal troubles for Diddy hasn't really been great. I mean, he's coming off even the video of him assaulting Cassie. That was not so long ago, and that
That
got
wasn't that
leaks.
long ago. He
Right.
definitely assaulted her. That was assault. That was
Yes.
assault.
Yeah. So it's like that was on the pipeline. You thought maybe he skated by that, and now this is coming. So I don't know what's going to happen with him. Honestly, I don't think he's the only one. If it comes down to it, if he goes down, I think he's gonna out some other prominent entertainers that might, be in hot water. Like Usher, for some reason, has deactivated his Twitter account.
They're talking about
Deleted
Usher. They're talking
all,
about Meek Mills. They're talking about
yeah,
Justin Bieber. They're talking about a lot of people that were at the
yeah.
Diddy parties. Were you at
So
one of those Diddy parties back in
I
the day?
was not in the Diddy party. So, yeah, I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. We might see some more shocking revelations coming out. And, in terms of support, I don't know if anybody's come. I mean, you had a former artist that worked on him, Shine, the rapper who was famous for his single Bad Boys. Who's now the president of Belize. He came out with a statement saying, he feels sad for Diddy, but he also was quite candid about how he felt that he took a charge for Diddy. He ended up doing 13 years in prison
Ooh.
before he got released and got deported back to Belize. And he was honestly candid saying that he felt like Diddy ruined his life for a 1999 gun charge that happened, a shooting that happened in a club with him, Diddy, Jennifer Lopez, and Diddy's bodyguard at the time. This happened in New York. So I don't know. We'll have to see what happens with Diddy. I will be keeping the news, but if he's not careful, he could end up in the same boat as R. Kelly, and we saw how many years he got. So
I'm glad that you touched on R. Kelly. Will you still be listening to Diddy's music the
yeah,
same way you still listen to R. Kelly's music?
well,
R.
right,
Kelly is the king of R&B. Diddy is not the king of rap, but he was at the mountaintop for a while. Will you still listen to his music?
yeah. Bad Boy Records was his brainchild. I mean, he had Biggie as an artist. He had Beanie Siegel. He had a whole bunch of guys that he made a lot of money. But Diddy's also been notorious for not paying his artists too and screwing them out of their royalties.
Dang, you
Mace.
sound like Birdman.
Right, Mace, another guy who's a bad boy artist, has complained about unpaid royalties and money. So, I don't know. It's I don't really listen to R. Kelly, so I don't have that problem. Now, Diddy is a different case because a lot of the Biggie catalog, he was a producer on that too. So, like Diddy's first album and Diddy's second album, he was on there. There's a whole bunch of joints like More Money, More Problems, and it can't nobody hold me down. So will I have a difficulty, listening to it? Maybe, but I always take this approach that you have to separate the artist from the art. The same thing with Kanye West. Kanye West is crazy. Kanye West says controversial
Whoa, whoa,
things.
what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of people would say Kanye has did some things that are unpleasant, but you can't take away from the man's musical genius. Like he is one of the greatest rappers ever in the history of the genre. So
And greatest producers, don't get.
grand greatest producer. So it's kind of that's probably the approach I'm probably gonna take when it comes to Sean Combs. Like I don't have a lot of Sean Combs playlists on my Apple Music. So, but if I happen to hear a song, I'll vibe to it. But I'm not. It's not going to affect me in any way. Like I said, Diddy is going to get his day in court. So we'll see. If he ends up being guilty, then maybe I will have to reevaluate some of the music that I have on my playlist. But it's all depends on how this plays out. I just say let the legal proceedings take place and we move on from there.
Hey, couldn't have said it better myself. Now, what I do want to do is continue on with the state of Black people. Are there any other current Black issues facing the community or certain people that are in the headlines that you would like to touch on?
All right, I'll be brief with this. There's a guy running for governor of North Carolina, Mark Robinson, who's in the news for bad reasons. African American Republican. There's some controversial tweets that have been resurfacing about black Nazis and saying,
Whoa, whoa. Is that even possible?
I don't know. It's just some very strongly sexually suggestive tweets as well. So
They've some people have said that Black people can't be racist.
yeah, well, I would say more so self-hating. So that's an issue that might, Mark Robinson that could cost him the seat. But other than that, not so many, you know, going on. I mean, there's the election. November 5th is coming around, right around the corner, election day. Could have the first black female president ever, Kamala Harris. So,
You mean Asian?
well, that too, but I mean, her daddy's Jamaican, so you claim whoever your father is. So if you got one black parent, you black. So it's like, uh,
Okay, all
I
right.
mean,
All
I
right.
mean,
All
yeah.
right.
So yeah, that's also been a question, and not so much on the social side, but there is an interesting documentary that was released on Amazon Prime, coordinated by Michael Vick, and it's called "The Evolution of the Black Quarterback." It's a three-part docu series where he chronicles the history of the black quarterback in the NFL and how far they come. I highly recommend it to anybody who's a fan of football. Some of the guys he interviewed was Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, Doug Williams, Warren Moon, Colin Kaepernick, in probably what a rare, interview because he doesn't do many interviews. Uh, Steve Young, a whole bunch of legends of the game to comment on this. So if you are interested or the audience is interested, it's called Evolution of the Black Quarterback. It's on Amazon Prime. It's a three-part docu-series. Go watch it. And it's from based on what I've seen, it's gotten some mad reviews. So and it's perfect, in this time period right now because prior to Bryce Young's benching, I mean, you had 15 starting African American quarterbacks in the National Football
I
League.
do want to not gloss over that, but I do want to touch on that for a second. What
Yeah.
is your opinion on the Bryce Young benching? He was drafted last year.
Yes.
So getting benched, what are your thoughts on the matters in Carolina?
I think it's poor. I really do. Now I understand they won their game last week against the Raiders. I mean, but can I really, take that with a grain of salt? Raiders have the worst pass defense, and Andy Dalton threw for 300. But I just think it's doing this young man a disservice. It's only been 24 games that he's taken snaps. He's already had three different offensive coordinators and head coaches. David Tepper is right there in the running for worst owner in the NFL.
Mm.
And I mean, it's stemming a lot from the second pick in the draft, CJ Stroud, because last year Frank Wright and the Carolina coaches wanted to draft CJ Stroud, but the owner wanted Bryce Young. So they got overruled. And now CJ is balling while Bryce has been struggling, and that has caused a lot of tension as well. But I also think it's just a sad state of affairs when it comes to development of quarterbacks because these young quarterbacks, you need to give them time. I think honestly, Bryce probably should have sat maybe for a few games last year, let Andy or whoever the backup quarterback is at the time get the start, and then give him some game time towards the late of the season. But then again, that's hard to say because he was the first overall pick, and it's rare for a number one pick to sit for a few year games before he gets thrown into the fire. And like I said, 24 games to me is not enough of a sample size to evaluate if the guy can play. And I remember I had a discussion. We were in the chat for the audience members. We have a sports group chat on Snapchat, and Bryce got benched, and then I made the comment about this is what happens to black quarterbacks. I mean, like I didn't even want to bring race into it, but then I brought it in
Hey, you
because
gotta point it if it's there. You gotta point it out.
and then Mike Christador on fellow sportscaster disagreed, so we went back and forth, and I had to break it down to him. I told him, Mike, there have been white quarterbacks that have just been as bad, but they've been given more games to at least show the coach something. Zach Wilson, he played off.
Statistically speaking,
Yeah,
Bryce Young and Trevor Lawrence, their first 2 years are almost identical.
right. And I'm going to take it to Zach Wilson. Wilson got a full 16 game start last year and the year before the Jets finally yanked him. Okay.
Well,
And
hold on. All right, hold on. The
but
1 year they did trade for Aaron Rodgers and he got
well
hurt. So
well right, yeah, but before they traded for Aaron Rodgers, they at least gave Zach multiple games. I mean, 2 games after this season, and then you yank the pull the plug. Like I mentioned this, like black quarterbacks have to be twice as good to get half as much, and I don't think that was enough of a sample size for him to succeed. And I told Mike that I guarantee you, if Bryce was white, they wouldn't yank him after 2 games. And I just I'm just going to be quite candid because this. I mean, it's gotten better in terms of African American quarterbacks getting opportunities, but at the same time, I remember what Donovan McNabb, former Eagle great, said
shout out.
about black quarterbacks and white quarterbacks. He said black quarterbacks are expected to be great off the jump. White quarterbacks are expected to develop for the chance to be great. So if you're not a superstar coming out of the gate, then you get benched and then they don't give you a second chance and then you fall out of the league. I mean, we've had
Look
too
at
many
Geno Smith.
yeah, we've had too many examples of guys that have not started well, but then they got a second chance and they balled out. Geno Smith, one example. He was a dumpster fire with the New York Jets, right? Then he took a time. He was back up in San Diego, then went to the Giants, got the first start. He actually broke Eli Manning's consecutive start streak when they started Geno that one year, and then he comes to the Seahawks, and 3 years later he's been a consistent starter. Baker Mayfield, another guy, looked like he was going to be a bust. Got a second chance at Tampa Bay. He's balling. Sam Darnold, I only know it's 3 games, but he currently leads the league in touchdown passes. So we can't give up on these young quarterbacks too quickly. You got to give these guys a chance to develop, and then you have to also give them support. Give them an offensive line. Give them some skill position players. And if it doesn't work out, then you can, start over. But after 2 games, I just didn't think it was right for the for the Panthers to do that. And it was just a confidence killer. So, but who knows? Maybe Bryce might get a shot to come back in. I mean, we'll see what the Panthers do next week. If they start losing on Andy Dalton doesn't play well, maybe Bryce gets another shot at starting. But for me, if I was Bryce, I'd get on the phone with my agent to see if I could request a trade to go somewhere, maybe go under a different offensive head coach, maybe sit for a little bit, and then get an opportunity to start once again.
All wise words from Mr. Kelvin Otang and Ponza. I will say this. Everything you're saying is right because you look at the Carolina quarterbacks that have left in the last couple of years, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield included, you see what they're doing. Um, Sam Darnold is lighting up the league right now with the
Yep.
Vikings because of some injuries. Baker Mayfield took his team to the playoffs last year. I
Yep.
believe they beat my team.
Yep.
Hurts, but Baker Mayfield's doing big things. He got his contract, and this is all after leaving Carolina.
Yeah.
So it's possible Bryce Young might have to leave Carolina, but it's still early. He has time. I think benching him is, they're just trying to save him. I think they're trying to save him a little bit. They probably should have brought in a veteran before and then instead of trying to start Bryce Young. because I know there's so much pressure as a head coach to, get your wins because, you're tied to your quarterback. Your quarterback's doing good, you're doing good, you getting wins, you're gonna be okay. But if they
Mhm.
start folding, then you're gonna get kicked up out of there.
Yeah.
So I understand them starting Bryce Young, but in reality, they should have let him sat and develop like you were alluding to earlier. I will say that I don't have the upgraded version of Zoom, so I only get 45-minute Zoom calls at a time. Right now, I have 7 minutes left.
Okay.
Um, any final words before I have to cut the Zoom, Mr. Otang? There is a game going on between Alabama and Georgia. I'm not sure the score. I'll check it soon. But if there's any other issues, whether it be the state of sports right now, Cowboys, the black delegation as a whole, Glorilla is set to drop an album soon. I don't know how you feel about Big Glow. She's set to drop an album soon. There's other things going on in the world. If there's anything left, you've got about 6 minutes to touch on something.
Um,
Mr. Otang Ipansa, the Prince of Ghana, whatever you got to say, let it out.
all right, I'll just do this quickly. There was a huge trade in the NBA yesterday. Carl Anthony Towns, who's been a staple for the Timberwolves, first overall pick, was traded to the New York Knicks for Julius Randle, Deontay DiVincenzo, and a whole bunch of first round picks. So my quick thoughts on that is the Knicks are clearly going for it next year. They want to be a contender in the East. I mean, you got the likes of Jalen Brunson with Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby. Now you put Cat in the mix, and they could be a serious threat in the East. Now all of a sudden the Eastern Conference looks like world beaters because Knicks have upgraded. You still have the Bucks with Giannis, Chris Middleton, and Damian Lillard. The Celtics are the champions, so JT and Jalen Brown are still doing their thing. The 76ers just acquired Paul George. Now you
Mhm.
got Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid, so they could be a factor. Heck, right here in the city of Orlando, the Orlando Magic might take that another step. Bankero has proven himself as a number one pick. Franz Wagner, another great number two option. And they just signed uh Kentavious Caldwell Pope, who is a great shooter. So the Magic could be making noise. So the Eastern Conference could go 4 or 5 team deep with a whole bunch of serious contenders. And in the West, I mean, Lakers, I'm interested to see what Bronny James, if he can make the team, if he gets some minutes, I'd like to see what he does. Russell Westbrook is now on the Denver Nuggets, so we'll see how he teams up with Jokic and what they can do. And, October is pretty much here, so I'm just waiting for preseason basketball, and the association will be back. And it saddens me that this is the last year of the NBA on TNT with Charles Barkley, Shaq, Ernie Johnson, and Kenny the Jet Smith. Because after this year, the NBA coverage will go to NBC. So the NBA and NBC is coming back. So this is the last year for NBA on TNT Inside the NBA, the Emmy Award winning show that's been on for 30 years. So they're gonna go out with a bang. And yeah, I'm just ready for where we're in the thick of October where basketball's coming back. Can't wait. And yeah, that's it for me. And I'll keep up with Premier League soccer as well. So just can't wait for the association to come back.
Outstanding. I do want to give you an update on that score with Alabama and Georgia. It's 28-7 Alabama.
Mm,
Alabama is whooping on the number two ranked Bulldogs. Alabama is the number four ranked. And I do want to put in a hot take of my own real quick because we still got some time. I just want to say this for anybody who thought, especially Mel Kiper and a couple of these other NFL insiders who say Carson Beck should be the number one quarterback taken this year. I
no.
think it's ridiculous. Shador Sanders has to be the number one. If it isn't him, I could understand Cam Ward because of what he's doing. But at the same time, if you look at what he's doing, the game he just played, he's kind of just playing. Not, I'm not saying he's playing on easy mode, but the Hurricanes have a squad. Let's be honest. They have a legitimate squad. They're good
Yeah.
to go. It's Miami, it's the Hurricanes. Everybody knows who they are. Shador Sanders, Shador Sanders should be the number one quarterback taken. Carson Beck is in my opinion, he's one of those guys who's benefiting because he has a complete team around him as
Yeah.
opposed to living in chaos like Shador. I think Shador Sanders should be the number one quarterback. This quarterback draft class, they kind of say it's reminiscent of the Kenny Pickett draft class from, I believe, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, I think that Shador Sanders is better than Kenny Pickett and those guys. I think as long as you give him a good O line, you give him a solid running back, he'll be fine. You
And
saw
some
what
skill.
happened today. You saw what
Yeah.
happened today. You give him
Yeah.
some time, give him some players with him, he's good to go. That's just
And
my hot take. I think
yeah.
he is the best quarterback in this upcoming draft.
Uh,
For a team to take Carson Beck or any other quarterback outside of Cam Ward, I do like Cam Ward. Outside of him, ridiculous.
I agree. Shador should be the number one quarterback. Cam Ward, if he keeps putting up numbers, he can make an argument. And here's a guy that nobody's mentioned that I think could be a steal: Jalen Milroe of Alabama.
Yeah.
Jalen Milroe can play now. Jalen Milroe is a dual threat, so don't be surprised if Jalen Milroe and Alabama start racking up wins and he puts up numbers. He could also be a guy that could go in the first round. So
Yeah.
yeah.
They're
And shout out Arch Manning of Texas. I mean, Quinn Ewers is injured right now, and Arch just threw for 350 and 2 tubs. So Texas might have a quarterback controversy going into, yeah, they're the number one team in the country. So if Quinn gets healthy, who does where does the head coach go? Do you go to the freshman Manning or do you go back to the experienced Ewers? So that'll be a storyline I'll be watching for in the weeks to come.
Before I go, I do want to touch on that. For a real coach, real players, you gotta go with the senior. It's his last year. Even though Archman is balling out a little bit, you
Steve
still gotta
Scarcese.
go with the veteran. You gotta go with
Yeah,
the veteran. But on that, we're out of time. Mr. Oteng, it's been a pleasure having you here. Um, we're gonna have to do this again.
no
The
doubt.
it's NFL Sunday. I know you guys already played, but it's NFL Sunday again tomorrow. We'll come back, we'll regroup, we'll have some more questions.